Welcome to the TowerCast podcast, the towering podcast for the towering filmmakers of El Paso and the world. Keeping it real like a roll of film, always looking to develop with you, the listeners, and the stories that you tell. Today is a very special episode as once again, we are accompanied by the cast of the Tower production team. We got Austin Young, keeping us young over there.
How's it going?
We also have De La O, Michael De La O,
Hey
director.
guys.
How's it going?
How's it
And
going?
also,
How's it
of
going?
course, the man, the myth, the Walt Disney of the production team, Carlos De La Torre.
Yo, thank you guys for tuning in.
And of course, the actor, you know him from our great films that we make, John Eric Castro. There he is, spinning around.
How you guys doing, film people out there?
Today's a great episode for y'all. Thank you so much for listening to us on Spotify, Google Play, wherever you may be listening to us. We really appreciate y'all. Today we have not only a prevalent member of the film community, but somebody who honestly has put El Paso on the map in a way that no other filmmaker has, at least in my opinion. He's brought people from around the state, from around the corner, and from within the city, and congregated them all through his film festival. And we're here to celebrate him. And this is sort of a tribute episode, an interview, a sit down with the one and only, the content creator of MindWarp Films and the head of the El Paso Film Festival, the founder, Carlos Corral. How you doing, man?
I'm doing good, man. I am happy to finally be part of the tower.
Hey, thank you for jumping on, man. We love.
Welcome in.
Yeah, we love having you on, man. As Juan says, I think what's so awesome about your story, which I'm excited to hear about here on the cast, is it all led up to the El Paso Film Festival, really, and we were thankfully a part of it last year, in person and participating by viewing the films this year virtually. And I think it's such a telling thing that you're in charge of the festival, Carlos, because you're a true professional. You've been in the film community for so long, and we're happy to have you on, man. So thank you for jumping on.
Absolutely.
Of course, yeah.
Hey, real quick, is that a real background or? Is that one of those-
This is a real background. So yeah, this is
Real books,
Get a
bro.
book right there. Which is your favorite one?
that would be Rebel Without a Crew. That's up there. That's my
Hey,
favorite one.
yes.
And then
Yes.
I've got Gizmo right there. I don't know if you can
Oh,
see
yeah.
him.
Nice.
try
I
not
love that you got the El Paso Film Festival badge hanging there. I mean, come on, like it's
From the
got
badge, the car.
Yeah, you know,
Wow.
we've had to work from home since March, so I kind of made this, room command central for
Hey.
the El Paso Film Festival.
Love it, man. And if you're not seeing this on YouTube or Facebook, make sure to check it out so you can see Carlos's awesome background. He's even got a curved monitor that I'm so jealous
I know.
of. And look at that.
Look at that.
My curved monitor doesn't look that good. I mean, I don't know. So no, it's great having you on, man. Thank you so much for jumping on. Juan, I think you want to kick us off here?
Yeah, we usually start off the podcast trying to break down each filmmakers that we've invited onto the podcast by letting them explain to us how did their hero's journeys begin. Just a quick recap, if y'all don't know what the hero's journey is, that is the film structure that was inspired by the teachings of Joseph Campbell. And the way it goes is that each of us have like a cycle that we kind of go through, the beginning and the end. We end up at the beginning and we end up at the end as well.
It's
So it
like
all
a
comes to
circle.
the question that we always ask every filmmaker is, of course, how did your hero's journey begin, Carlos? How did you get into film, and what led to the flourishing of the film festival?
Okay. So I graduated Cathedral High School 2002. I went to the University of Texas at Austin. I went in as a computer science major, believe it or not. Before
We
I
all make
just
mistakes.
it was a good way to learn what I didn't want, out of life. So I was talking to my academic advisors, and they asked me, what else do you like to do? And I said, well, in high school, I used to love to make movies with friends. And, I had fun doing this. I love writing stories. I love being creative. And then that's when he told me, oh, we have a film major here. You should apply there. And so I'm like, to the film school? I'm like, yeah. And then I said, okay. And he said, oh yeah, and pick up this book, Rebel Without a Crew by Robert Rodriguez.
Oh,
and at the time I'm like, who's this? And I had no idea who he was, no idea of anything.
And you were in Austin, right?
And I was in Austin. Yeah. Again, I had no, I had no inspiration to be a filmmaker yet.
Sure.
Even though I had made like a bunch of movies with friends, and I just thought as like, hey, this is fun. I could turn it in as an art project, for English class in high school.
Right.
And yeah, that's kind of where the journey started. I got in. Well, actually, it took me 5 tries to get into the film school, believe it or not. So I was an undeclared major for a while, but
it is a very competitive film school. I might add, it's a very competitive film school. It is.
It's very competitive, and if you don't have the grades, me, I got C's in all my computer science classes, and I'm like, okay, I don't have the grades. I'm going to try to work up my GPA. So
sure.
I tried to go work on my GPA in other classes. Luckily, I was able to test out of Spanish, which gave me 4 A's. So I'm like, okay, I'm on my way there.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then I also got involved with Texas Student Television. So I was learning both TV and film at the same time. I was able to take film classes because I met my wife at the time who was there. She worked at the communications office, and we met originally with the University Filmmakers Alliance, which was a film group at UT.
Wow.
And then she helped me kind of navigate, oh, hey, you want to take editing 1 with Don Howard? You're not the film major yet, but write him an essay and I think he'll accept you. So it's like she's giving me all these tips on how to jump into them. Yeah. So then finally on my 5th application, all I had to write to the dean was, hey, I'm only 12 hours away from graduating with a film degree. Why don't you just let me in now? And they're like, okay, come on in. So yeah, finally in my senior years when I got into film school and graduated from there. But of course, there's been plenty of stories between there because I was never in the classroom. I was always outside filming with friends. So
sure.
I have a closet of bad movies.
And we want to hear the story of all of them, really, because it's about the journey, right? Not necessarily the destination. It's about the journey. Backing up a little bit, you told us you were at the Texas Student Television. You were the former station manager there, if I'm not mistaken, right? Yeah.
So I originally started as a volunteer because they let for Texas Student Television, that's more open. It's not exclusive like the film school. Any major, any student can go in and volunteer and learn television. So I decided to go there, and that's where I met a lot of other filmmakers who were doing TV. So you're pretty much college kids putting together TV shows. Like we were doing shows like Video Game Hour Live. We were doing stuff like Sneak Peek. That's awesome. Like that's where I met a lot of my friends who I still keep in contact today. And, even though it's studio lighting, you're learning studio lighting, you're learning audio. And that's actually where my audio background was kind of born, because nobody ever wanted to do the audio control board. Wow. Nobody wanted to do the mics. Everyone wanted to be the camera op or the director or the producer or the writer, anything like that. But nobody wanted to do sound. So I'm like, I can volunteer and do that for.
I think it's funny that you say that, Carlos, because I was listening to an interview recently, and I think we talked about it on our other podcast, on the Watchtower podcast, but I was listening to an interview recently with Robert Rodriguez and John Carpenter. And John Carpenter, obviously a student of film as well, USC, and learned everything, learned directing and writing and lighting. And he himself, and I think it's so fitting to have you on this episode to talk about this, because he himself said, the number one thing I didn't want to do was sound. Leave that to somebody else. John Carpenter, the great John Carpenter, was like, I didn't want to do sound. That's the only thing I won't touch. I'll leave it to somebody else. However, we all know that great sound makes or breaks a film. If you could have the greatest film in the world, but if the sound is terrible, and trust me, just like you said, you have a closet full of bad films. We learned our lesson early on with sound, man. We had so many mistakes with sound, and finally we're getting there, right? But can you tell us a little bit about that? Because we haven't had somebody on the podcast that focuses purely on sound. Can you tell us a little bit about your enthusiasm with sound and film, and how important it is to you and presently,
Yeah. Well, I mean, just like everyone else, I also didn't want to get into sound, but it was the job that nobody, like you said, nobody wanted to do it, but it was my way of getting on a film set. So I have friends who were shooting 16 millimeter at the time, or they were doing their own TV productions. Nobody really saw the value in it. But for me, I saw the value in at least learning from them. So I got on set, I would do my job as sound, and then I would see how they would direct. I would see the kind of story they would write, how the actors would work, how the set works, how protocols are. So I would try to just learn that way. It was a weird way to get film set experience while also working on sound. But then I also discovered that sound has its own challenges. Luckily for me, I'm 6'2". I can carry a boom pole very high, so I'm able to get very good sound. It's tougher when you're shorter,
right?
And they're always like, "Hey, booms and shot, get it out of the shot." So that's what I learned too. But again, working with all of my friends and all these other filmmakers, I was learning too. Like, I would see the mistakes they would make. Oh, somebody forgot the props. Oh, somebody didn't call the main actor to show up. Like little things like you're seeing things kind of either fall apart or work.
Right.
And you're taking it in and saying, okay, I have to remember this. So the next time I do my movie, I don't make that same mistake. I've seen the mistakes.
Yeah.
And then of course I started to talk to other people who were into sound, and that's where the philosophy of people forgive bad picture, they don't forgive bad sound.
Yeah. Definitely.
And actually I remember too, and I'll go into how I met him too, but Robert Rodriguez would occasionally come talk to our classes.
Sure.
And I asked him a sound question, and he mentioned, yeah, I remember being in film school too. I did the boom thing, and that's how I learned, because I remember what his answer was. I would do the boom, and this guy would be directing this actor, and then I would just be kind of nodding my head going, yeah, this guy doesn't know what he's doing. But I thought that was really relatable, and I'm like, yeah, I feel the same way. So I kind of kept at it too, because once everyone knew, oh, Carlos does sound, just call him for this, call him to be on your set. So then I would jump from set to set. That's also why my grades were so poor, because I was constantly jumping on projects. And I'm like, okay, I know today we're supposed to learn mise-en-scène, narrative strategies.
But I want to be a filmmaker now.
But I want to be a filmmaker. Yeah, I want to go make movies.
To this day, in the El Paso community, and I'm sure in different areas, I'm sure in Austin as well, you'll get that. Like whenever we're gearing up to do a film, we'll say, we have a guy in Tower who does our sound, same as you, didn't want to do it, but was wanting to learn. He learned it, and now he loves it. Now, shout out to Ricky. But when we don't have Ricky available, and we're kind of going back and forth, we'll definitely have Carlos Corral in the mix. Like we'll say, there's somebody will tell us, you got to get Carlos, man. There's nobody better in El Paso to do sound. You got to get Carlos. Your name is still thrown around to get on different projects. So I think that's really fascinating. To go back to your point about Robert Rodriguez, for those of you that don't know, to Carlos's point and to mine, it's my favorite film book as well. I revisit it anytime we're going to go back into a feature. And one of the biggest things, for those of you who don't know, Robert Rodriguez, when he was doing the mariachi, he was recording sound after he'd shoot the take. So he'd shoot the take, and then because he knew how important sound had to be, he's shooting on celluloid, he's shooting on film. He knows that he has to record separately, and it's not as easy as it is now with the whole digital age. But he writes in his book where he just had to literally hold the mic up in the same spot with the same actor and say, can you repeat your lines? And just record the lines and dub the lines into the film. That's how it happened. So I think it's really interesting that even he had to put some type of importance in sound, he himself. So I think it's really interesting.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because the technique that he used like that, he would at least still record the sound while on location.
Right.
It sounds very different when you've done your movie and then you record your audio in like a VO booth. Yeah. It's very, very different, because you take away the atmosphere of the room or the set that you're on. So it was a good plan that he had. A very risky one, I'll tell you that, but good plan nonetheless.
Yeah. There's a plethora of filmmakers in Austin, and I'll get to the ones in El Paso and how we've developed in the past decade for sure. But I want to ask you about your experience of working with people in Austin. You say a lot of them are still your friends to this day, but you obviously met, just to name a couple alone, obviously Robert Rodriguez, Wes Anderson, there's definitely Toby Hooper, lots of Texas filmmakers, most of them come out of the Austin area. And I think El Paso is about to make a splash and change that so that we have more filmmakers coming out of here. But can you tell us your experience with the Austin filmmakers and that film society and that scene?
Oh, and of course, don't forget Richard Linklater. One of my
heroes. Yeah, one of my heroes, absolutely.
Yeah, I would say that being in Austin and being in film school in Austin, we did have access to a lot of great filmmakers, because our professors would be friends with them and they would invite them like, hey, come speak to my class. Or, I remember one time too, I forgot who did this. Like we had a couple of people, actually it was Robert Forster, now that I remember.
Wow.
He came and actually judged some of our short films. And I thought it was so cool. And this was, I think he had just done Jackie Brown. So we were
the late great. He just passed away this year, right?
Yeah. So. And so when I saw him on Breaking Bad, I'm like, hey, I know that guy. I saw him in college. But yeah, that's I think that's one advantage of being in a place like Austin with film school. Just like, if you were to go to, LA or New York, there's other filmmakers that you meet because professors bring them in. And that is kind of an advantage, because we get to hear their stories, how they started. It makes us want to excel and try to be like them. And so, for me, the big connection for me was, Robert Rodriguez's story, because he, $7,000 didn't stop him, did the movie anyway. And that's what I like about reading that book, is that intentionally he's like, I didn't expect this to go to Sundance and win. This was supposed to be a home video market thing, make some money, make another one, make some money, make another one. And I thought that was really cool because he wasn't afraid to fail forward. And I think that's something that filmmakers, I would really love to tell them, or tell you guys too, don't be afraid to fail forward. There's a really good book he actually recommended to all of us when he was speaking to us. It's called Art and Fear. And it's about, two classes that there's a lot of things that I can say about that book. It's amazing. I've highlighted like more than half of it, but they mentioned that there's a class where the teacher says, okay, this group, you guys make one perfect pot, and the other class or the other group, you make 100 of them, but I still want you to make them good. So then by the end of it, the class who tried to make the group that tried to make the perfect pot wasn't able to, but the ones who did 100 of them had 99 failures, but the 100th one was perfect. So I thought that was kind of cool that like, okay, so everything you do in film, someone's going to see it as a failure. You might see it as a failure, but that's how you're going to get to your next big film. And that's the only way you can advance as a filmmaker and an artist, is just by taking those risks and not being afraid to fail.
And it's kind of crazy how with art, I mean, when you make it, it's meant to be shown, it's meant to kind of be displayed. There's this inherent quality that us creating something, or even like actors being in front of the camera, it goes somewhere. It doesn't just like stop with us. And I think that's kind of what stops us all from wanting to make it, because then we're thinking, I don't want to show a really crappy film and then people think that it kind of ends here with me. This is where I kind of stand at and all that. But it's that important lesson to learn. Just go out and
fail fast, right? Fail fast, because and Rodriguez, again, I quote him all the time when he says, there's 10 bad films in you. The sooner you get them out, the sooner you'll get to your better films. Fail fast, right? So I think that's a very good point.
Yeah, and that's also the advantage of film school. You get those 10 films out real fast.
Definitely. I think that for me, definitely, I can't speak for anybody else, but for me, just like you, Carlos, my formative years in film were when I was in college. Definitely. I mean, that's when Austin and I met, and we kicked off with our first intro to film class, and then we, 4 years later, here we are with a film company, and 20 plus films later. I think it's definitely formative, and you're right. It allows you to just make them for class. I'm just making it for class, and if it fails, it's just made for class.
Well, while we're in the subject, Carlos, why don't you name your first 10 that you?
Ooh, let's see.
Hey, I love it.
I'm gonna try to remember a few. Let's see. There was Eye of the Chicken, which started in a giant.
I love it already.
Amazing.
Let me think here. I had one called My Best Friend. I had another one called.
What were you into? What was your style?
What did you want it to be?
Yeah, what was your genre like?
I actually didn't see. That's the other thing too, is that I didn't really have one, and I was trying to find it. We would do dramas, we would do comedies. We did a lot of horror, a lot of zombie stuff.
But as far as your genre, your style goes, Carlos, I know you jumped into the sound just for the sake of being on set, and you fell in love with the voodoo of it all. But did you ever intentionally want to write or direct or produce or anything like that? Was that something that you really wanted to jump into when you fell in love with film?
Yeah, actually, there was actually another way I kind of got around. Again, since I didn't have the grades, there was a class, I think it was called RTF 88, but it was called Special Projects. So what that was is that if I could find a teacher who was a sponsor, they would let me, they would give me class credit, but I could work on my own movie. So I went to Charles Ramirezberg, who was actually Rodriguez's old professor. He was still teaching there. And I asked him, hey, can you be my sponsor for this class? So I told him, here's what I'm going to do. It's going to sound crazy. It was the end of the spring semester, I think, of my junior year. And I said, I'm going to go back to El Paso and I'm going to film a feature. This was Santos. So this is one that I don't know if anyone has seen this, but it's Santos. It was before Hands of God, before I did that one. I did Santos and I shot it all here in El Paso. We were at Calumet. We did all this stuff. And it was like my crazy, gun to, like I tried to pretty much not remake El Mariachi, but very highly influenced by it.
Right.
And then so my pitch to Charles Ramirezberg was just, hey, I'm going to shoot this movie in the summer. And then if I finish it, the production part, can you sponsor me to do post-production for the fall semester? And he said, sure. So I came back to him in the fall and said, hey, I finished shooting the movie. Here are my editing notes. And so every couple of weeks I would check in with him because I would edit scene after scene after scene, and I would turn it into him.
Now,
and
was this on cellular, Carlos, or were you shooting DV?
No, actually I shot it on a Canon XL2. It was, yeah, I shot it on a Canon XL2. So believe it or not, I never touched celluloid while I was in film school. I worked with people who did, and we were on sets that did, but I never physically, cut anything on the Steamback. Just because, that was the time when like the DVX 100B had just come out. That was 24p, and that was a like huge deal to students. Yeah. We were like 24p on digital. Oh my gosh! And then the Canon XL2 came out, so we got that camera, and I shot Santos on that one. And then, so I made the movie, and of course it's not, that's where I realized, because I tried to DP the movie myself, and I realized, oh crap, my sound really sucks. Like I should have taken my own advice. And, but it was one of those, hey, I got it done. I premiered here in El Paso, and I was like, hey, okay, that's not, cool. Everyone was, because that's the thing too, is that when you premiere those films, you might see all the flaws, but everybody else is having a fun time. Hey, there's that actor. Hey, there's this person, and they're having so much fun, and they know, that
the magic.
Yeah, they know, but they also know too that, hey, we're not expecting big Hollywood, but we just want to be entertained for 90 minutes, and that's what it was.
And I think it was George Lucas that said, films are made to be released. Films are made to just be out. So just don't sit too long on it. Don't stay too long on it. Finish your film, move on to the next thing. And I think filmmakers tend to, I've met a lot of filmmakers that unfortunately tend to stay in the four walls and don't want to release their projects or don't want to finish that script, or because of that fear. And generally every artist has that fear, but you have to get it out. Like you said, you got to get it out. Now, in your experience, upon releasing your film here and having people be a part of it in the community, was that the film community, I'm sure, was very different back then. I know in the past 5 to 7 years, it's really changed, but can you tell us a little bit about that and how you've seen the growth and how you've seen the change here in El Paso and from your experience?
Yeah. So actually, and I could talk to Eric about this. So Santos was the very first time I worked with Chris Jones, and he was a villain in my film. Wow. He is not the new hero that you all know him as
save
now.
Me, Chris Jones.
That's not saving Chris Jones. This was drug cartel villain Chris Jones.
He's got the look. He definitely has the look.
Yeah. Well, and he was great. And I always I'm like, dude, you are a great villain. And then I saw Where One Stands, and I was like, oh, now you're a hero. I'm like, dude, you got to be a villain again. It's so good. But yeah, it was pretty small. But Chris Jones was one of the ones I worked with very early on. And then
who also has a film in the festival this year.
Yeah, who also has a film in the festival, Save Me, if you have not seen it. But he was one of the few who I connected with there. And then when I was done with the film, I went back to Austin, came back to premiere, but then I went back because I was still a student.
Sure.
And it wasn't until we graduated, my brother and I graduated, and then we came back, started our film production company. But I was still in Austin at the time. I hadn't moved quite back to El Paso. I was kind of between the two cities.
Sure.
And that's when I wrote the next feature, Hands of God. And I was like, okay, I'm going to do a medical drama. So then when I went back to El Paso, I met up with Chris again. Okay. And I said, hey, man, I heard you're working on Where One Stands. Show me that movie. And then I did. And that's where I found Manny Rubio. And I'm like, hey, that guy's really cool. Who is this guy?
Actor.
And so, so that was really early on, where he was getting all these actors to participate with Where One Stands. So I'm like, oh, and I know Arturo Portillo too. I know all these people. Yeah. So then I came back to do Hands of God, and I called all of them and said, hey guys, I'm doing another movie. Chris Jones vouched for me. So then they all jumped on board on our film. So that was, and actually after so just, for that movie, I did hire a DP. I worked with Benny Ontiveros, but, again, for me, for sound, since we didn't have too big of a budget, I bought myself a, Audio Technica 897, a boom pole, XLR cable, and I said, all right, I'm shooting all the audio straight into the camera. I'll be the boom op and direct, while you light and do everything else. So that's kind of how I did it. And beautiful. So it's actually great if you do sound and you're directing, because, it's like, okay, I'm going to listen to your takes.
You get to monitor your sound.
Yeah, you get to monitor your sound. Yeah. But then after we finished Hands of God and premiered it, I think that was at the end of 2009. And that's when I realized I've made 2 features in El Paso. Why don't I just move back here? There's no point, because Austin was getting tougher and more competitive.
Sure.
I remember I was trying to get jobs like as an editor and a lot of other things, and I was losing them to a lot of my friends who had graduated, who were all there, and nobody wanted to move away. And I'm like, okay, maybe it's better if I go home, and because I'm like, I have all the resources. It looks like the community's growing. And the other thing I did forget to mention, back in 2005 and when everything started, there was also EP Film, which started, and that was Gilbert Chavarria. I don't know if you guys have met him. So he was the original guy who did EP Film, and I remember he put together like an EP film, or not, like a film convention. It was back when like Club 101 was over by UTEP. But yeah, so we that was when the film community was really coming together, and I was meeting more people. And then of course, when I moved back, that was the other reason I got into sound, because I got back and I realized, okay, I've worked with cinematographers already. I know more people who are DPs. Throw a rock, I can find one, but I cannot find a sound guy to save my life. Wow. So I had, we had saved up all this money from productions and everything, my brother and I, a company. And then I said, you know what, let me invest in sound gear. I can at least fill this part to fund our film production. So I figured, okay, I'll get called to work audio for other productions, but then I'll still do my own writing and directing. That's why I chose that avenue, because right now and
supply and demand.
And to this day, it pays my bills, man.
That's great.
Sound pays my bills.
Pay your bills.
Yeah.
Your brother Carlos, he's a filmmaker as well. I mean, I know you guys started the company together, but is he the business side of things, or?
Competition, or what is it?
Originally, it kind of was, but he got into web design. So, and now he's working for, he's doing marketing and communication for a logistics company. But yeah, no, we originally graduated with film degrees. Actually, my wife too. My wife graduated. We were all filmmakers, but then, of course, and this is why I love my wife so much, because she gets it. Well, she gets it, but also at the same time, she also didn't really like honestly, being a filmmaker or in the film industry, it's hard, man. You work, you don't, work, you don't. The hours are crazy. Sometimes it's like, why are you working at midnight? I'm like, I have to get this thing done. It's like
15-hour days,
15-hour days, 12-hour days. Yeah. So then she decided, you know what? I'm going to go get an 8 to 5 and get us health insurance, and you can keep doing what you're doing. So I'm like,
that's amazing.
Wow. Baby, I love you.
Should have married her again.
I right? Yeah. Actually, when she moved to El Paso, that's when I put the ring on. So I'm like, okay, yeah.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
So
you
actually, keep that insurance, right?
Well, she works at UTEP now.
That's awesome.
But she's always telling me I don't feel like I'm using my film degree, and I keep telling her, actually, you are. Because I told remember Hands of God? You were my producer. You kept me in line. You made sure I met my deadlines. You made sure I had everything I needed to, did I make these phone calls? Did I do this? She just kept everything so structured.
Similar to Rodriguez, because his wife did the same thing for him, right? I mean, it's crazy.
Elizabeth Avion is a fantastic producer. And I told her, I'm like, you're doing that at your job. You work for the provost office. You're an auditor. You make sure people get their shit done. So that's why I'm like, you're using your degree, just not in the film industry. And trust me, I don't know if you want to do that, but she's seen the nights I've had or the days I come back, and I'm just like,
and that's what a lot of people don't recognize. A lot of people don't recognize about the film industry. My wife, now she's my wife. Still weird to say. It's only been a couple weeks, but she studied so many different things. She has 2 bachelor's degree, and in December she gets her master's. And she studied a ton of in fact, her first bachelor's was in multidisciplinary studies. And I remember when we first started the company, I'd say she'd studied so many things, and she was my kind of advisor for a lot of things. And I'd bring her on as a script supervisor just because she was really good about the order. I'd bring her on as hair and makeup because she used to do beauty pageants back in in college and stuff. So you kind of use those resources. They don't have to be film people. In fact, if they're very good at one thing and you can bring them on to master that thing, then you're gonna have the best of that thing on your set. And I think a lot of people don't understand that.
Yeah, I would say at Tocayo, we have the same kind of woman, because she also did script supervising for me and had done hair and makeup too. So yeah, when you meet a woman like that, They are special.
You got to lock them down, man. You got to lock it. You got to put the ring on them.
I'm looking for one.
No, yeah. So I think that's very cool, man. That's shout out to what's your wife's name, Carlos?
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mention that. Oh, she's gonna kill me now. I'm like, no, Sandy Salinas. She's my wife. Yeah.
Shout out to Sandy. My wife's name is Sandra, and they call her Sandy.
Oh, hey, so, oh my God, dude! Look at that.
It's starting to get a little weird.
I'm getting jealous. All right.
So the lesson of the day today is find a Sandra, guys. Find a Sandy.
Sandra.
Yeah.
Sandra. Okay. Hey, Carlos, I guess just from an actor's perspective, and you have a company, what's your biggest pet peeve of like actors when you're doing like the audio or something? Like, what do you hate about actors?
Or also the team. I feel like what when you're doing audio, what's kind of the challenge of that, or as far as like working with people who are not doing audio?
Yeah.
Wait. Okay. So for actors, what is my pet peeve with working with them?
Well, I mean, I think that just the sound in general, when it comes to doing sound with actors or with the production crew, with et cetera.
I'm asking just for actors.
I've actually actors have always been kind of cool with sound. I always, when I approach them, especially because you have to wire them and everything. You approach them, introduce yourself, because it gets a little intimate. You got to put the wire on them, and you see them every day. So you're just like, hey, man, you know the deal. I'm going to put my hands in your shirt, that kind of thing. But no, I always try to click with the actors because I also want them to never feel like they have to worry about their audio. So, and then sometimes it's just letting them know and working with them too, asking them, hey, so did they give you marks? Where are you going to move? Where are you going to be? So I can make sure I get all of your audio.
Right.
So I've really never had a problem with actors. Nobody's ever, I've met some really cool actors where I've been starstruck, but they've never been like, nobody's been too big of a diva yet for me to have a story. However, the crew is a whole different thing. I am constantly fighting with the director of photography. Constantly, because sometimes, and especially if you do like 2 camera shoots, sometimes they get it in their head where they're like, okay, camera A is going to be my 85 millimeter. It's going to be my tight shot. And then on camera B, they'll throw an 18 to get everything. And I have to explain, okay, that's not how audio works.
Right.
Camera A is what I'm going to get audio for. So I'm going to put the mic where it's supposed to be right here for your 85 shot. And like, well, just use the wire. And I have to explain them, okay, microphones are like your camera, which if you're using like an Arri Alexa or whatever, and a GoPro. The lav is there to get a line that you might miss.
Right.
That's it. It should not be your main source of audio. Now, in the documentary world, that's a little different. Sure. But in the narrative world, you want to get the vocals from someone with the $1,000, $1,500, $2,000 mics, because their vocals are going to sound amazing on them.
That's what they're made for.
And that's what, exactly. That's what they're made for. So I have to kind of explain, look, I understand if you're going to do the 2 camera thing, but why don't we start small? Let's do 50, 35, or if you're going to do 85, do a 50. If you're going to go wide, that's fine. Do 24 and 35. And it's weird having to explain that to a director of photography from someone who has a sound background, but I'm saying that as also someone who grew up with film, and being my own DP, I'm like, oh yeah, I have to remember I need to get sound. So I need to change up my shot. So I was never afraid to not put the shot first. But of course, a lot of other DPs will tell you, no, the shot always comes first. And I'm like, okay, yeah, but there's a way to work it out. Don't worry. Sure. So the biggest obstacle has always been for me, sometimes the DP, but then you get really cool DPs who, I remember I did work with one DP. We actually, when we worked together for the documentary Home and Away, which was about the kids at the Bowie High School, the sports teams,
Nice.
I worked with John Tipton, and he was a former sound guy. So working with him was always great because I'm like, okay, you know the deal, man. Like, you're going to pop over here, then over here, and I'll be over here. I'll be on wires for a little bit, but then you'll come back in for the head, for the close up. So we knew how to talk to each other. So that's always, again, communication is always an important thing. But but actors have always been great, especially El Paso actors. Actually, I've never had any problem with any El Paso actor when it comes to sound.
Some of the most hungry people we've ever met.
Yes, we are.
There's some of those actors that we have here. I will say, I did get a chance to work with with you, Carlos. You like had an amazing gig with Calvin Klein. And,
yeah. That's
I saw
right.
you. Yeah, I was lucky enough to be like in front of the camera, but what was really cool was like when I went on set, like the people that they hired were on point, and there was this person on the very back with like an El Paso film hat, and I was like, oh, like I know that company, like I know that film festival, and so I walked up to them and like, you know, it took me a while, but then as soon as I saw his hat had this engraved stitching, it said Carlos Corral, and I was like, is that who I think it is? I'm like, I've heard whispers of this man. I've never met him, you know, like, and sure enough, it was Carlos Corral. And I will say, man, like he made me feel super safe, and he made me feel like, you know, he had everything under control, because one of the things that you worry about when you're speaking is like, am I going to sound okay? And man, Carlos, you like killed it. Like, honestly, I'm so fucking proud of you. Like,
and to your point, like what you were saying, Carlos, about like what Juan is saying, actors, the talent in front of the camera, whether it's documentary work or whether it's narrative, they don't want to have to worry about, is my shirt rubbing on the mic? Is my, you know, am I speaking too loud because the mic is right here? I mean, they shouldn't have to worry about that. So when you're using a boom, that really takes away a lot of the pressure, I'm assuming. I know, Castro, we've stuck a lav on you for emergency situations, but we've mostly used, you know, booms. But I think as an actor or as talent, you got to feel safe on that front, right? Like, I don't want to be yelling. I don't want to have to project if I don't have to.
Exactly.
You know, that type of
Carlos made me feel like I was like being operated on. And he's like, "Don't move. This is your lifeline. You know, it'll be fine." I'm like, okay. I felt okay. You know?
And if I haven't said this already, Juan, you have a very sexy billboard. Like, it is awesome. But yeah, I remember too, because Juan recognized me, and I'm like, you're like, Carlos Corral? I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, I'm not famous. Like, it's like, come over here, man, let me just mic you up. So
you know, I'm like,
no, yeah, but yeah, I'm really happy that you felt safe, because that's the kind of attitude, and that's the kind of person I like to be in front of people, so that they feel calm, collected. And once I wire you, it's like, yeah, don't worry, man, you're gonna sound fantastic.
Yeah,
relax and let me do the driving.
You know, for one of the films I got into the film festival, In Your Arms Tonight, that John Gone Productions. You know, again, looking for a sound guy. I'm normally doing camera work or grip work, but they needed somebody to do sound, so I jumped in with whatever sound equipment I had. I was booming for the most part, and yeah, you would think it's a lot easier to make people feel safe with a mic, but no, like we were testing shots. It was trying to get things, and it's something that, yeah, I was able to put enough so that we could get a good production together. But there's an art to it, and like every department, there's that art, and if you're not treating it like that, if you're not respecting that, or like you said, you've worked with DPs who they're kind of like, no, this is my shot, my baby, this is what matters, this is what a film is. And
it's all your fault, Delao. It's all your fault as a DP. It's entirely your fault.
You're pressured.
Yeah. but it's that, it's like, really, if somebody else has a job there, it's because they're crucial, whatever that might be, script supervising and all that. And I think sadly a lot of people who get excited about filmmaking think about the directing and the camera, and we lose track of the sound and just how important that is. But hearing your story and seeing what you do, it really makes us get back into that respect of it and want to like do better on our projects. Yep. And I guess that's why you're kind of like a local legend, because they were like, well, I just want to match up close to that.
It's true, man. It's entirely true. I jumped on the set. Ramon Villa, he asked me to be a guest director for his class one year. And when I jumped on that set, this was before, maybe halfway through Tower 20, or maybe we're just wrapping up. I forget, but we were having a lot of challenges with sound. We were training our guy, and he was getting the hang of things, but it was quite not quite there yet. And I remember when I went to that set, it was the first time I had ever had my own headphones on set. And I went back to my guys after that, and I was like, we're never not going to have this on set, at least not when I'm directing. I need headphones and a monitor on set, because we're in this generation where we get playback. We get playback immediately. We don't get dailies. We don't get to develop 24 hours and then see the dailies the next day. No, we get immediate replay of our video. Why shouldn't we have that for our sound? That's why there's so many sound problems, because it's not being monitored on set. And I think I know that with DPs, So yeah, I told Austin's my producer. I was like, dude, I need headsets every set from now on, please. Yeah. And I think as somebody as a DP, with a DP, when the director's working with the DP, usually a lot of the times the DP doesn't want the director to be on his back or on the monitor, because he knows right away he's gonna tell him, no, I don't like the shot, la da da. With sound, do you ever get that experience, Carlos? Like, a director is obviously monitoring the same thing you're monitoring. Do you ever get that whole, like, oh, my director's listening in? Because some directors don't like it. Some directors won't wear the headphones. They like to be free. They like to be free on set. Have you ever gotten anything like that from your end, from a director?
Depends. For some of the bigger narrative features that I've worked on, they always have a headset, no matter what.
Sure.
And if not them, the script supervisor's got one.
Right.
The producer has one. You know, like everyone, there's a lot of people who have the headset. So if they don't hear something right, they'll let us know. But again, for those sets, you know, that sometimes I've just boom mopped for those, and I've worked for a sound mixer. So he hears it as well. So if I miss a line, he will tell me, and then I got to go talk to the assistant director and be like, hey, I missed that. I need another shot. I need another shot. And sometimes it won't happen. You know, sometimes you can say, okay, we're going to go again for sound. And I'm like, cool, awesome. And actors will always understand that. But sometimes, you know, they felt, no, we nailed the focus. The lighting's great. Performance is awesome. We're moving on. And we just have to say, okay, well, hopefully the lav is good, and if not, they'll just ADR that one line. But again, that's just it happens, you know, because they all have a schedule to keep as well. I can't tell you how difficult it is. Like, Juan, when we were outside interviewing you for the Calvin Klein thing, how many times did I have to say, hey, stop, we have a plane?
Yeah, or the lawnmower.
Or the lawnmower, or the guy. There was a guy.
We had one of the crew members like go ask nicely, like, hey, is it cool if you can like not, you know, mow your lawn? I don't even think he was mowing his lawn, because nobody has grass out here in El Paso. I think he was just like blowing his rocks or something. Like, we asked him nicely if he could stop, and he was like, nope. So we just had to wait. And
and then he stopped after like 10 minutes. But so that's kind of the things that I have to always, and they're the worst, because I always feel bad, because I'm like, I'm telling the director, hey, stop the flow. I know Juan is saying some really cool stuff right now, but I can't hear it very well, and I want to hear this because it's a really cool story. Exactly. So let's wait. But
you also have to be assertive, right, Carlos? You have to be assertive, and because ultimately, at the end of the day, it's going to be blamed on you. Whether you're sound, whether you're the DP, your lighting, it's going to be blamed on you. So you have to be assertive and say, I mean, one side of the coin is, I love the art. I want the project to be the best it can be. The other side of the coin is, this is my job, and if I don't do my job well, I'm not going to get another job.
That's very true. Very true.
It felt very safe on set, because whenever there was background noise that would, you know, like diminish the quality of the sound, like Carlos was very like, hey, you got guys, and something about the way he spoke, you know, you kind of were like, everyone stop what they're doing. Yeah. Like, Carlos is talking, and whatever he says is important. And when we stopped, it never felt like, you know, the flow was getting ruined. In fact, he became the flow, because we had to time it in between whenever a car or a plane were passing by. You know, that stuff's unpredictable. Carlos, you could just feel the experience, and it was really nice to be on set with him.
No, and that's great, because and this is where I can kind of give the advice to you guys, for those of you who are writer directors. Even if you do something else on set, you can still take that experience. And I learned to do that by being, you know, by directing. It's just, hey, try to be as minimal on the flow as possible. Make everyone just feel like, hey, brother, just, you know, hang tight for a few seconds. Car going by, we're good. Go on, you know, like, you know, just little stuff like that, where, you know, you're interrupting the flow, but you want to make sure you're not stifling it. And it's a delicate balance, but a lot of that you learn. So for all those filmmakers who say like, oh, I just want to be a writer director, I'm like, no, you can do other things, and you can still take that experience of being a director and apply it to that position, no matter what.
No, definitely. I think when you're the assertive guy, I mean, as much as you don't want people to look at you as the asshole, sometimes you have to be. I mean, look, everybody on set has a job to do, and when the boom guy is too shy and quiet, and I can't stop the take, and waits till the take is done, you're just wasting more time, and therefore wasting more money. Unfortunately, that's how a lot of people will see it. That's how the producer will see it. Anyways, they'll look at you, and the AD is going to look at you like, why didn't you tell me mid take? We could have saved some time.
But the actor doesn't want to stop. He's in flow.
Well, sometimes it's not just the actor. Like I can tell you when I was working for, if you guys haven't seen this movie, I actually boom opped for about a week and a half on a film called Stargirl that's on Disney Plus right now. It was up in Albuquerque.
Okay. Yeah.
The main boom op was Dave Sickles, but he had to jump to another feature, so they called me up. I actually worked with Daryl Frank, who is actually a good friend. He's the sound mixer of Breaking Bad.
Cool.
So he was mixing the movie. So I went up to work with him for a week and a half, and that was a little intimidating because as the boom op, you're the representative on set for the film department. If you've ever been on a big set, sometimes the sound mixer will park his cart somewhere way out, not even anywhere near the set, and he's just always talking to me saying, all right, let's do this, let's do that. And they'll talk to the director on the headsets, but then I'll be there to talk to the rest of the crew, the DP or the assistant director, and like, hey, I need you guys to do this. Yeah, I have to be the representative. And that's when I have to be a bad guy and be like, hey, I know you're trying to, diffuse the light, but if you put this here where the directors are, where the actors are, I'm not going to be able to get a good, line, and you're going to see shadows. And so I have to tell them too, like, hey, what you're doing is kind of going to bone me. Yeah. It's going to bone you because you're going to see the shadows. But that week was intimidating because we were shooting the final scene of that movie, which was the whole like the prom that the kids had done for high school. Yeah. There were 5 Alexas on that set and just one boom op. And it was me, and I'm like, "How am I supposed to juggle this?" Like, there's 5
because
cameras.
They're shooting. They're shooting in a very TV style. When you have a multi-camera setup, it's a very TV, which means mics are set. When you're on the soundstage, mics are set for the most part. You don't have to do a lot of moving. But when you're on a set, a feature film, or if it's single camera TV, you're moving with cameras. So to have 5 cameras,
and then of course, when you hear, "Oh, boom was in my shot," and I'm like, oh God, which one? And if they say, oh, it was camera D, and I'll be like, who cares? It's not A, it's not B, and it's not C. Who cares?
That's the third AD that came to talk to you about that, right? So you're like, well.
But luckily though, we did have 2 sound utilities on there. So then when that happened once, I remember the mixer told me, hey, I understand what happened. Call up my sound utilities and turn them into boom ops. I'm like, I can do that? And they're like, yeah, you have the power to do that. I'm like, okay. I went to the AD and said, hey, I need 2 more boom ops. Yeah, so the sound teams are comprised of a sound mixer, a boom operator, and sound utility. Sometimes there are 2 sound utilities. Think of it as like a DP, first AC, second AC.
Gotcha.
It's just like that, 3-person or 4-person department. And the utility guys are the ones who are micing the actors, making sure that the sound mixer has all the equipment organized, stored, batteries are always charged, wires are always working, that kind of stuff. Me as the boom op, I'm just the boom op on the wireless system. I don't, mess with anything like that.
So you don't have to jump to a different position, or jump to a different hat and go and mic somebody up. Then
that's how you keep it tight.
And that's how you keep it tight because the utilities will go talk to the the director and the actors. They'll get them mic'd up, and I'll be ready on set because I have to work with the crew to see what they're doing while they set up the shot, where the camera's going to be. So anyway, I found out I could call up the utilities to be extra boom ops, and it's great because they get paid as boom ops instead of utilities for that day. But it's great because then for that 5 cameras, I have me and 2 other guys all boom mopping the different actors. And I'm like, oh, good. I don't have to go 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah. Oh my God, I'm trying to avoid five cameras. Now it's just, okay, good. I'll just get these 2. You guys get those 2 and you get that 1, so it worked out really, really well. So even today, I'm still learning when I get called up onto these big sets, like, okay, what's the protocol? What are we doing? How many people do we have? Can I call up a second boom guy? And for me, that was the dream. I'm like, oh, good. I don't have to worry about anything like that. I'm going to miss a line. There's a second boom. I got a wingman. It's great.
So I definitely don't want to run out of time here. And I want to get to 2 very important things, which are MindWarp Films and the El Paso Film Festival. So I would like to kick off MindWarp with your experience. You're a producer and director there, but you're also the co-founder. I know you already mentioned a little bit about how your brother and you started the company, but where has MindWarp, where did it come from? Where has it gone? What are the type of projects you guys have worked on? And what are the types of projects are you currently working on?
And most importantly, how'd you name it?
How did we come up with that name?
Random name generator.
Me and my brother, we would, when we were working with our home movies and stuff like that, we were.
Was the Wu-Tang Clan generator
No, actually, it came from we were brainstorming and I told my brother, I want to come up with a name that like warps your mind when you hear it.
Wow.
And then that was it. And he goes, okay, what about MindWarp? And we're like, yeah, let's do MindWarp. So that's how the name came up. And then we originally started out as MindWarp Entertainment. But then we, with my brother, he was doing web design. So we were film, video, web company for the first couple of years. And then we just became MindWarp. And then, like all good things come to an end, we realized after, 10 years in business, it's like, okay, well, you got a much higher paying job at a logistics company. I'm going to continue to go do film and not worry about, web and everything like that. Cause I had also gotten into web, and that's what led to El Paso Film Festival later. But,
your brother was trying to get you to that away.
No, well, actually, because I was working with him in web, I actually bought the domain El Paso Film Festival back in like 2013.
Oh, wow.
It was a project that I always wanted to do, and I said, yeah, eventually we're going to do this, because we need to have a space. But then part of the reason I put that on hold was because Chuck Horak was doing the classic film, classic film festival, and then he called me up to do local flavors. So I said, oh, okay, I'll just do this. I'll put the El Paso Film Festival thing on pause for now.
Shout out to Chuck Horak. He's very relevant. Shout out to Chuck. He's helped that tower out a lot. We've been on his show On Film quite a few times. And not only that, but I know you all work together in the same space with Lucky, and you guys all kind of have a similar workflow and space there. So I think that's really cool. That's definitely the type. I mean, Chuck is a film critic, and he knows a lot of people, and obviously loves cinema. Yep. But shout out to Chuck. I just wanted to say that because I think he's very important in the film community, but he's also behind the scenes, and a lot of people don't know about him. But I think it's awesome that you two work together. Carlos, I know he's been championing the El Paso Film Festival since it started, so I think that's really cool.
Yeah. So under Chuck, I learned a lot about running a festival, running a showcase, that kind of stuff. So that's where that experience came from. But then MindWarp Films, I was still doing my films. I was actually doing a lot of work on sound, for a lot of movies. I was writing, producing, directing at the time, but then there were a lot of films that I would do sound on that I thought would turn out great. And so that's how I started to get them into local flavors. Like, hey, I remember working with that. Hey, how did that turn out? Oh, good. Oh, it's great. Cool. Let's bring it in. It was a way to kind of show off the work, but then and that was a great way too for me to start meeting new filmmakers, seeing, hey, who's around, who didn't leave yet. Cause that does unfortunately happen with El Paso filmmakers. Yeah. They graduate or they stick around for a little while, but then they move to LA or New York or Austin or Albuquerque. And that's fine. I always tell them, go learn or go do what you got to do, but stay in touch and let me know what kind of movies you're making so that you can come back and show them. And then it's kind of my way to also bring them back and be like, and by the way, now that you made a movie in LA, how was the experience? You should come make one in El Paso. It's a lot easier. Right. So it's all been a little bit of a balancing act between directing, producing. I've written a few things, but again, I don't feel writing is my strongest suit. So anytime, someone does give me a script for feedback, I put my producer hat on and tell them, okay, I think this is how you can do the film. You can do it probably in 2 days. You need this much crew, you need this many people, and I think you got it. So I can always do that. And then of course, directing every once in a while. Actually, the last short film I directed was Pen, which was back in 2016. So I haven't directed anything in a while, and I need to. The film festival kind of, took me a little bit away from that. But
sure. Well, let's get into that. Let's talk about that because I think it's very important. It's something that we were able to be a part of, and it was a great festival through and through. A completely professional, completely untethered with in terms of the flow, in terms of the action. I mean, I think I hadn't seen something like that in El Paso in a long time. Obviously, the Plaza Classic has its own flavor and that has its own style, and it's good for what it is. It's great for what it is, especially if you're a cinephile like me and you love classic cinema. You always go back to that festival, but the El Paso Film Festival did something for El Paso that really, truly didn't exist. And how did that come about, Carlos? How did the El Paso Film Festival really gear up?
So I was doing the Plaza Classic I think I did it for about 6 years. I did the local flavor, and every year we would get more and more content. It got to the point where I was like, oh, wow, I'm going to have to start like not accepting some films. So I'm like, okay, but this is good. It means we're showing quality work now. But then after that, I thought, you know what? I think it's time we spin off and do our own thing. I loved being under the banner of the Plaza Classic. It was great. But again, it was just, they only gave me one showcase. It was only one thing I could do because you're right. It only showed classic films. And I thought, yeah, they only show classic films. I shouldn't try to turn this into its own thing. Yeah. So I went back and I remembered, oh yeah, I bought that domain name like 5 years ago. Let's do something with that. So then, so I looked into it. I raised funds and that was actually the first year we brought David Blue Garcia, who's a good friend of mine. He did Tejano. If you guys haven't seen this movie,
and he just
did the new Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Yeah, I believe it or not, I emailed him and I'm like, bro, okay, I need you to tell me about the whole experience. And he was like, I can't talk about it. I signed an NDA. I'm like, that sucks. But I also brought other friends like Ben Foster and Mark Dennis. If you guys haven't seen their movie, it's on Netflix. It's called Time Trap. It's awesome.
I love Ben Foster. Dude.
Yeah, but they were friends from college. So all these friends, David Blue Garcia, Mark Dennis, Ben Foster, they were all friends from college. So I kind of brought them in and we had this like little mini film reunion. But they also had really awesome movies. So I'm like, hey, this is a great way to kick it off. And then of course, I had plenty of films from El Paso filmmakers. And yeah, the first year, again, not too big of a celebrity thing. It was just kind of like, hey, I'm getting it started, it's going. And then it just so happened 2019 was when I sent Robert the letter and was like, hey man, we're kicking off. It's our senior year, it's our sophomore year. Would you love to come? And surprisingly, I got a yes. And I went, oh my God, it's happening.
Oh my God.
Oh my God, it's happening.
What's really cool is that Robert not only obviously has roots as a Texas filmmaker, but he has roots in El Paso because of his parents, right?
Yeah.
I'm sure that was I know he brought them out for the screening and for everything. So he has roots here at the end of the day, right? So I think that was definitely a reason. But I think they're starting to recognize, at least when I was talking to Rocket, they're starting to recognize the talent here, and they're starting to recognize that filmmakers here are doing something that Austin did 10 years ago, right? But now El Paso is picking it up and really, really showcasing talent. So I think that's really cool that you were able to bring them out.
Yeah, and actually, if I can add to that, when I dropped him off at the airport after everything was over, he actually turned to me and said, "Hey, Carlos, you have a really good group of filmmakers here.
What?
Keep working at it." And I went, "That's awesome. Thank you so much." So whatever, I guess he loved the whole party and everything, or just meeting people. And by the way, I am so sorry if I was acting like an enforcer that night.
No, you had
to. I was given specific instructions by like his assistant to. Don't let him get overwhelmed. Make sure he's got like a place to just go chill that can be safe. He'll come out and say stuff and do stuff, but then he wants to, go back so that he can still, because he was there with his kids too. So, he doesn't want to get like overwhelmed and just start signing autographs and stuff like that. And I'm like, okay. So that's why, if you were wondering why I was like, okay.
No, because it did happen.
And in fact, I wasn't even, I was actually going to say, I think I want to thank you, Carlos, and through the El Paso Film Festival. That I got to meet Robert and I got to talk to one of my heroes. He surely was one of my heroes, is one of my heroes today. And all of his films, I tell the stories all the time that my brother and I started watching Spy Kids and we really,
Spy Kids.
Hey, Spy Kids is a great film, man.
A great movie.
It's a great, not only kids movie, it's got a great cast, Carla Gugino and Antonio Banderas and everybody. But anyways, I got to meet him and I remember my brother and I grew up watching movies together. He went the psychological route. So he studied psychology and business and stuff. And I went the filmmaking route. And till this day, man, like when I took a picture with Robert that day, he was like, "Oh, dude, come on, that's amazing," And I got to talk to Robert about Tower, and I got to talk to him about what we were doing. And I just remember it was a very small conversation because, like you say, everybody started coming, and and you had to be that guy. You had to be that guy. But I remember when I was talking to him, he gave me this look, man, and said, "Man, like you didn't have to say much." He said, 20 films. Dude, you're doing it. And he took my card and we got to have a good conversation. And really, that meant the world to me, man. So thank you for being able to facilitate that, because that was a great experience.
Yeah.
No, and that's part of the reason I thought of Robert as one of the first guests I wanted to bring, because the experience you just described, I had that in college with him. You know, I went to go see him. They had just given him an award in 2003. This is before like he had shot Sin City. I got to meet him. I got to interview him for our student TV channel.
What?
And so I was just like, wow, this guy's so chill and cool.
He's really cool. Yeah.
Is he really like that? Is he?
Yeah. He's very chill, very cool. And then, Elizabeth Avion came to speak. His
great.
wife at the time came to speak to some of our classes. And then I met his sister, Patricia Vaughn. I met her at South by Southwest in 2004. And actually, her and I we're still friends to this day. She actually, I remember when I was a student, she asked me, "Hey, do you edit?" I said, "Yeah." "Okay, my brother Marcel, if you don't know Marcel Rodriguez, by the way, he's also a director of photography. He shot a bunch of documentaries and did From Dusk Till Dawn, the series. But I met with him as well, and they were like, "Hey, we did this music video. We need an editor." And I said, "Yeah, I can do that." And so I did it, and they were really happy. I think it's still on YouTube. It's called La Gitana de Triana. Was the first music video. Yeah, and it was barely her second album too, so she was starting out as a musician as well. So we've just kept in touch the entire time. So it was always great to kind of just have that connection. So when you run into everybody, then, she would, take us to all the premieres. So I got to go see Grindhouse. I got to go see Predators. I got to go see Once Upon a Time in Mexico. So we saw all these films, and then we would go to the after parties, and that's where the relationship was. Don't think that it was just like this, oh, I sent a letter and he said yes. No.
Of course.
This was a culmination of like years.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic, because a lot of filmmakers, we all hear the glory stories, right? And we all think it's tough, man. It's tough. You do have to build a relationship with people, and you have to put the time in. You have to put the work in. You can't just expect. It does happen to people. I'm not saying it doesn't. It does happen where from one day to the next, your life changes and you're directing the next.
Like how people win the lottery.
It happens. But it's not. It happens. But it doesn't mean you don't hustle and put in the work and put in the experience and the years. And I think that's obviously reflected with you, Carlos, because I'm telling you, man, like, number one thing, apart from meeting Robert and having a conversation with him and everything, I got to meet a lot of different filmmakers that I had just heard of, here in El Paso. I mean, we're all making films. We all don't make the time to connect. And the El Paso Film Festival, not only in the lobby area, but at the after party, we got to sit and talk to, that's where I met Robert Holguin, for instance, and he's become a really good friend. That's where I met I got a lot of guys like Renato Limon, who has a festival in a film in the festival.
Oh, Renato, yeah, he's got I See a Darkness and Cuarto Oscuro.
Oscuro, yeah. I mean, I got to meet a lot of people in that festival and make connections, and that's what it's all about. That way, I know next time. I mean, Renato and I have been talking about him being my DP for a film that we're working on and stuff like that. You meet those people so that you see their work. We see each other's work, obviously, so we know the names. But when you get to meet them, you get to get a feel of what they're going for and who they are, and it's easier to establish that connection. The El Paso Film Festival, I think, does that for people. And we're going to talk about how it went virtual, and that's definitely what we're missing out on a little bit. But we're still connecting through the various Facebook groups, through Messenger, and obviously once we see the films, we get to join these panels, and that's still there. But I'm very thankful to the festival to be able to do that, man, because we always talk about, trust me, as filmmakers, we meet up with each other and, hey, yeah, man, we got to do that thing together. And hey, yeah, we got to do that workshop together. Or we got to do that meet and greet, and we'll bring our teams together. And it just never happens. It just never happens.
Yeah. And that's also, first of all, I'm really happy that, that if you and Renato do a movie, I'm like, oh, it's going to be great. That means so that's the other thing too, is that filmmaking is networking too.
Definitely.
And that was the one thing I always felt that, and that was another reason why I thought the festival was very important. It's like, I see all these filmmakers, I follow them on social media, I see what they're doing, and but there's got to be a way to bring them together. I know, film, party, alcohol. That way everyone will talk to each other. But yeah, and that's the kind of relationship we were. Yeah,
that's the three true ingredients right there, man.
The three true ingredients, yeah. Film, love, alcohol.
I'm telling you, man, it was just a professional setting. I know it was just like you said, the sophomore year, but I mean, the setting in and of itself was the Rara group. Obviously, all the sponsors were kind enough to do their thing, but the festival, the Plaza Theater, I'm sorry, has a very special place in my heart. In fact, my new script has a whole story tailored around it, and I love that theater, and the fact that the film festival was there, and to see different films, including ours, on that screen was just a big deal. It really is a big deal for El Paso filmmakers. And I know that all the filmmakers that you invite, not just from Texas, by the way, you invite filmmakers from around the world, and they do come and they do see the potential. And I love that. They come and they look at the Plaza Theater and they look at downtown El Paso and they're like, man, you guys got it good here. Like, you guys can shoot stuff here. You guys have a whole set here to play with. And I've been preaching that for years. So I think that it's awesome that other filmmakers are being exposed to El Paso through the film festival. That's the number one key thing. I think our work is finally being paid attention to outside of El Paso, and it's what we need. That's why filmmakers make films, for more people to watch them, right? So can you tell us a little bit about the El Paso filmmaker and the El Paso Film Festival together, Carlos, if that makes any sense, how you see these El Paso filmmakers rise up and how you're showcasing them?
Yeah, well, that's first and foremost what I want to always try to do is promote, El Paso filmmakers. And trust me, it is a difficult job because, there are so many films that get submitted to us that that's where I always have to make the hard call. It's like, okay, which ones am I going to put on? Which ones can't I put on? What can I program to? Because the other thing too is that I also want to bring in filmmakers that you guys meet, because again, I'm not sure where the filmmaking life will take you. If you end up going to an Austin, LA, or New York, I hope you've made a contact at the festival where you can call that filmmaker up and be like, hey, I'm in town. We met at this festival, let's talk. And those are the connections that I really, really want to facilitate, because I always see the potential in everyone. I know one day they may leave, but I also want them to come back. But I want to see how they've grown as a filmmaker as well.
I mean, you're talking about filmmakers too that are an example to us. Guys like James Arrabito, and Lucky McGee, who have gone out and made it elsewhere and made films that have gotten attention and have done really well. And then they're coming back to El Paso to make their next features here. I know Lucky's a friend of ours, and he's telling us about the projects that he just wants to be based out of El Paso, him and his partners. And that's what we want. Ultimately, we as Tower have always kind of made it a mission to, if we're going to leave and make a film elsewhere, let's do it. Let's learn that experience. Let's get it, but let's bring it back. We want to be based out of El Paso. That's our ultimate goal.
Yeah. And speaking of which, if you haven't seen this on our virtual festival, check out They Once Had Horses. Lucky directed it, and I did sound on it, but that was all El Paso made. But yeah, I totally get and understand. And actually, listening to your previous episodes, it was all about, how do we get feature films going? And again, that's where I'm hoping the festival is a way to connect everyone, so that you find everyone, especially with what they specialize in, like you said, finding the guys who are into sound or into, gaffing or being electric, whatever the position you want to.
Yeah, it's a community. You can't make it alone.
It's a collaborative effort.
I know one of the things that we did on this podcast is we brought Drew Mayor Oaks, our film commissioner. Shout out to Drew. And Drew's always talking about this specifically. Drew has obviously been a film commissioner in different cities here in Texas, and he's met the guys, the Kevin Smiths and the Robert Rodriguez's, and he knows the people in the industry, and he knows what it takes to be in the industry. And I know his big push right now, though things have kind of slowed down with the film commission, and I know they're kind of on pause till COVID passes, but Drew's always preaching, we have a film community here, and we have to bring the work here. We really do have to bring the work here. The Texas incentives are slowly but surely getting better for Texas filmmakers. That's what the producers care about ultimately, is that we get some money back into the city and we get some money back into production, right? So I know that the Texas incentives are getting better, but it has to be El Paso filmmakers advocating for El Paso. Otherwise, nobody's going to hear of us. Nobody's going to care. And I think you're doing a very good job of that, Carlos, because you are not only getting work here in El Paso, but wherever you go, you're advocating for El Paso filmmakers.
Yeah, unfortunately, though, that is the uphill battle that we unfortunately have, is this incentives. And I tell you this just from speaking to other producers.
Sure.
A lot of times they go to New Mexico because, again, they're getting 28% rebate. A lot of people have gone to Oklahoma now because it's 30% there.
Marty Scorsese's new film is shooting out in Oklahoma.
Because they're paying the rebates. What they don't realize, though, is that again, this just falls on different producers and different production companies. But in New Mexico, sure, they'll give you 25, 28%, but that rebate doesn't come back for at least a year and a half, 2 years.
You don't see
in Texas, okay, they give you a little less, like 10%,
10
maybe
to 15,
15, but they give it to you in 6 months.
Right.
So it's okay. Do I get the money back quicker, or do I just wait until I get that investment back, or 2 years maybe? It just depends how many films. The other thing too is that New Mexico will reach its cap, and then you can't, film anymore. Texas very rarely reaches its cap, but it lately, I want to say it did reach its cap recently, but that's because they slashed it. It used to be like $95 million, and then it got slashed to like 30 million, and then it was just like it was soaked up by all the TV shows. So and which was great, but Queen of the South was filming in Dallas for the first 2 seasons, and then they took off to New Orleans, and it was like, oh man, we lost the show. Luckily, Fear the Walking Dead is still here. But yeah, a lot of it is just, it's a numbers game. It's just, okay, if I'm going to spend $1 million, where can I get some money back? And sometimes they'll say, okay, I'll just choose the state and work from there. So kind of the disadvantage that we have is just, unfortunately, Texas doesn't have as strong incentives. But again, people are constantly advocating for it. They're obviously, want films to be made here. Of course, life would be easier if New Mexico just kind of sucked up El Paso and we were part of New Mexico, because then, that would really boost us. But
I know that New Mexico is getting the business right now. Castro and I'm not an actor by any sense of the word, Carlos. I really am not. But
me neither, dude.
I went but I went to go be an extra on a big set, 12 Strong, with Chris Hemsworth and all those guys that shot up in White Sands. And when I was on the set, I did it for the sole purpose of, I want to see what we're doing right and what we're doing wrong on a big set, right?
Yeah.
So that was my sole purpose. I spent the 15-hour days just soaking it all in, so that we could bring it back to El Paso and say, all right, the way Hollywood does it is this way. This is industry standard. This is what we have to follow. This is what we should do. And I know Castro got to be in a number of films, but the latest one was with Asa Butterfield.
A Space Between Us.
A Space Between Us. He did that. And it's the same thing, right? Obviously, New Mexico is getting a lot of the production work. But I think El Paso, one of the biggest things is there's more and more companies. I mean, I don't want to name any because I know I'm going to forget somebody and I don't want to offend anybody. But aside from Tower, I know there's a ton of companies that are doing a lot better job of being industry standard, of getting certified, of getting the stuff on their resume, so that when film projects do come out here, even if they're smaller or they're travel shows or what have you, we can jump on them, get the work here. Ultimately, El Paso gets those hotel, the hotel money. They go the spending money here for restaurants and food and whatnot. Mm-hmm. So it helps the economy, and it helps El Paso. It helps us take it to the higher ups in the city and say, hey, man, we got a potential market here. You guys need to really, at least in El Paso, mess with the incentives and try to advocate.
Exactly.
So,
and I'm hoping that changes, because like you mentioned, COVID has changed a lot of stuff. Unfortunately, hotel motel funds are not where they
where
they need to be, because nobody's traveling.
Definitely.
And but yeah, I'm hoping.
How do you see that? How do you see that on the long run, Carlos? Do you feel like we're going to get back into it? Do you feel like?
Good question.
I would say if things are going to change, they need to change now. And what I mean by that is just, okay, we obviously have tried to get work, with the incentives and everything, but now we're going to have this economic recovery. Hopefully once, there's a vaccine and everyone gets vaccinated, there's going to be years of economic recovery. So I feel that's the window for Texas to really put incentives together and start bringing more work, because the other thing too, well, not just boost the economy, but as we all seen, TV shows got canceled, movies have been canceled. Yeah. There's so much content that is not being produced that needs to get produced.
Yeah.
And sure, you can throw all of it in Oklahoma or in New Mexico, but you're going to run out of incentive money very quickly, because everyone's trying to play catch up. It's like, we need to finish this season. We need to finish this movie.
And you have
Where else can we go?
The ability to, the unions, I think, have a lot to do with it too, right? Because the unions naturally are working for actors and are working for crew members. But here in El Paso, what I think is very interesting is that everybody's working from the ground up. So we're learning how to do stuff without resources. So the minute we get resources, we're going to know how to utilize them much more efficiently. And I think that's what producers and people that are bringing in the money need to understand, that you're not going to be throwing away your money with people who are used to having no money.
Yeah.
It's very important to note, right? I mean, it's very important to note for.
Well, yeah, and it's different. I mean, that is, unfortunately, that is, I don't want to say it's a good thing or a bad thing, but that is one advantage of Texas. It's not a union state, so
Right.
you can do non-union productions here. And but again, a lot of it is just following safety protocols. You know, the some of the protocols I've had to follow recently, like I actually just finished a production with Jason. We were filming in a hospital, and hospitals are kind of at capacity right now with COVID cases. So we're wearing gloves, we're wearing long sleeve shirts, we're wearing goggles, masks. Like, we're constantly disinfecting ourselves anywhere we're going. You know, like I'll drain like 2 things of hand sanitizer.
Yeah.
And of course, my hands are just completely chapped. But and then of course the hardest part is, you know, you have goggles, you have masks, and you cannot remove them. You have to
look through a viewfinder as much as you'd like.
Yeah. Well, no, you can, but it's foggy, and it's can I expose myself? Should I not? Should I? So that's the thing, though, is that we're trying to really, really be careful, because I am hearing a couple of movies are getting shut down because people are testing positive for COVID, and they have to tell everyone, go home 5 days. And then we're going to start testing everybody. So it'll take like 2 weeks to get back on set, because
spending more time and more money on getting back to set.
Yeah, and just getting tested too. And there was another production I had recently just produced for a client that was here in El Paso, where luckily they had the budget for it, but they told me, like, create your production bubble, get everybody tested. So I had to tell our entire El Paso crew, I want you tested 3 days prior. I want the results. I want to make sure you're okay. And when you're on set, glove up, goggles, mask. If you need to, take everything off, because I know it can be overwhelming because you haven't been on set for a while. Just walk outside, take everything off, breathe a little bit, come back in. And that's the other thing too, is that I had to also tell the client that, hey, things are going to be a little bit slower. We were just doing, 2 interviews and B-roll, but it took the whole day because we were telling them, like, okay, look, the space is small. So, the way we did is everybody was outside. First, the lighting crew would go in. Okay, you guys go light. Okay, great. Now, camera where you need to be, or you need to make adjustments. Okay, then I went into sound, and I'm like, okay, now I'm going to set it up right here. But then finally, when the interview happened, we were all spaced away. And then if I just pretty much told them, okay, only the camera ops and my associate producer, which was lucky for that one, and myself in sound. But luckily for sound, since I can run XLR, I'm in a whole nother room. I'm just like, nope, it's just the 3 of you in there with our interview subject, and there's plenty of things. And then of course,
but this is good, Carlos. I think filmmakers need to hear that it's I heard somebody say recently, it was a fellow filmmaker, if you need to go, if you don't need to go, if you're going out to shoot because you're getting paid for it, do it. Take every single safety protocol that you have to take. But if you're not, be careful and be mindful of what you're doing, because you don't want to expose your crew. You don't want to expose your cast. You got to be careful. So ultimately, like you say, you can do it. It is doable, but only with these safety protocols. And the truth about it is, they're establishing the safety protocols that are trickling down to the rest of us, because that's where production hub is, right? And where all the studios are. And I'm not saying it doesn't work. It does work, but you have to be very mindful about what it is you're doing. I think it's great that you're saying we send in lighting first, we send in camera next. You do it on parts, and even then,
that's so weird.
It's very weird because I'm used to sets where everyone's around. We're all talking to each other. We're all socializing.
They're all needed, but I guess now you're figuring it out.
Tell me about it.
Yeah, and actually, the one thing we didn't have on that one was hair and makeup, because again, it's like, that's still a little too close. But but actually, for sound, I've had to get up close to talent. But the way I do it, again, like Juan was saying, I approach you, but I've got my goggles, mask, gloves, everything. And then, or sometimes I have to take my gloves off. So I'll hand sanitize my hands right in front of you. I make sure you smell the alcohol.
Right.
My hands are clean. Okay. And then I'm going to approach you. Okay. And it'll be and I try to just do it as quick as I can, to make sure they don't feel uncomfortable. It's just, all right, cool. You're done for the day. I'm going to be back over here. So especially nowadays, you just have to be very, very cautious. And I don't want to call anybody out, but just know, filmmakers,
please.
I follow a lot of you on social media.
Yes, please.
When I see a lot of you with chin diapers, it's concerning. Right. Very, very concerning.
Thank you for saying that, Carlos. No, it's true. We follow each other. We see the behind the scenes you're posting. And again, it's not calling anybody out, but kind of calling you out. I mean, really, please, be mindful of the fact that it's not just you, it's your crew and it's their families,
Yeah.
So.
And it's scary to see I've already heard a few horror stories of people that are in other states or other places. Yeah. Where you see them and, they're just thinking, well, it's a small crew, it's a small short film, we're going to go out and film. And then one person gets sick, the next person gets sick, and then you're shutting down a production. It's not just pausing. It's like everybody's sick.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right, Delo. It's scary because we have we have actor friends of ours and production member friends of ours that message us and they're like, hey, I walked into this shoot and nobody's wearing a mask, man. Like, should I stick around or should I bounce? And we're like, no, if you're not comfortable, leave. Leave.
Yeah, if you're not comfortable, leave. There is only one of you. There will always be other productions.
Yeah.
Your health and safety should come first.
Very well put.
I'm glad you said that. Okay. Carlos, I think this is a perfect time to transition. Is there any advice that you want to give to filmmakers here in El Paso that are listening in, or filmmakers around the world that are listening in? Anything you would tell them from your experience as a filmmaker?
Yeah, and I totally forgot. We haven't even talked about the virtual part of the film festival this year. But yeah, I can give you the advice. So story and sound. Those are the two S's, because if you put them together, you put the two S's together, just put a line through them, and that equals money.
Oh, nice. Man. But, beautiful. No, and kind of as before we sign off, I definitely want to encourage people to go to elpasofilmfestival.org. If you have the Roku app, Amazon Fire, and
Apple
TV, you can download the El Paso Film Festival app. There's tons of great filmmakers.
Yeah, and it's for free.
Completely free this year, which is amazing. Just to name a couple of the people, a couple of films, friends of ours as well, friends of Towers, I See Darkness, Cut the Tech, Cuarto Oscuro, In Your Arms Tonight, Reply All. I mean, them, and then a ton of other films. The great Patton Oswalt is in a film called The Priest, a great short film that's on the film festival as well. We have there's special guests. Some panels have already kind of kicked off, but you can still catch the recaps of those. But with filmmakers like Lucky McGee, Jessica Mraz, fantastic actress, works in stuff like Supergirl and The Flash, and a ton of stuff that she's done on the CW. And she's a fellow El Pasoan, which I think is great. And I mean, there's just a ton of content here that you're getting for free, guys.
I'm hoping that, because that was the other thing too, is that, we had such a high note last year. I didn't want to let the festival die. I know a lot of festivals have canceled, or they said we'll just be back next year, and I'm like, no, I gotta keep something going. Part of the reason we did the Roku, Apple, and Fire TV apps was because a lot of other festivals, I saw what they were doing, and I wasn't liking it. They were using different services, and it's great that they pivoted and adapted, but I just wasn't liking the experience because you were experiencing a film festival on your computer. And to me, I feel like, okay, well, all of us work on a computer all day. Yeah. Let's disconnect a little bit and go watch a movie like we watch Netflix or HBO or something like that.
That's a good point.
And so I thought, okay, that's going to be the experience. And actually, I've had a lot of people question me too, like, hey, I can't get this app on my phone. I'm like, you're not supposed to watch movies on your phone. Good. What are you doing? But yeah, so luckily we had a lot of great content come in, and I was able to program a lot more, because that was the other thing too. The other advice I have for you guys, the magic number for a short film, 7 to 12 minutes. If you can make your short film 7 to 12 minutes, you are program friendly to festivals. When you start to pass 20 minutes, you start to become a TV pilot, and then you have to really weigh, okay, is this 20, 25-minute film that good, or are there 2 or 3 other shorter films that I can program to bring 3 more filmmakers versus 1?
That's fantastic. That's fantastic advice, Carlos. Yeah. I as a filmmaker, like I start getting into the point where my films are longer, and that's when you start deciding, well, this particular film may need a feature audience, and you may need to kind of look into making that into a feature. But for short films and for festivals, the most impact are the shorter films, naturally. So I think that's very good advice.
Yeah, and actually, and I can tell you here, like, you guys submitted Precognition last year. Yeah, I wanted to program it, but again, it was like it's just too long, and I didn't have that problem this year, but last year, when festivals are in a physical space, they have limited time. It's like, okay, I can only show this many narrative shorts, and we have only an hour or an hour and a half. So then you have to strategically think as a programmer, okay, what will get in. And even though, and actually, I believe it was, I hope that I got his name right. Josh is the one who did Reply All. So he actually submitted that last year. It didn't get in, but this year he emailed me and said, hey, I recut it. I redid the sound. What do you think now? And I saw it, and I'm like, cool. It's 8 minutes.
Yeah,
Click, you're in.
shout out to them, him and Brandon, who I know they've been doing a lot of films and a lot of fun films, man. They're always up to something.
Yeah, and that's the other thing too, is that don't give up. Like, because I know with film, you make your films, but then of course you want to get them shown at festivals.
Yeah.
Don't give up after one or two rejections. Your film will find a home.
Yeah.
I am trying to do my best to make sure that El Paso filmmakers can always screen at their hometowns.
Yeah.
But again, that advice is but hey guys, like, again, I don't care if you shoot your movie on a cell phone, story and sound. And if it's 7 to 12 minutes, I will heaven and earth move it and make sure you try to get in. Cause that's the other thing too, is that the more filmmakers I can get in, that's a comped badge. You're not paying for your badge when you come to the festival, and then I can hook you up and be like, hey, come meet other people. Hey, network with these people. Come party.
Yeah.
Hey, man, you did that for us, and I can very definitely say when we were involved in the festival last year, you're hey man, have you met this guy? Let me introduce you to this guy. Have you met this guy? Let me introduce you to this guy.
Yeah.
I mean, so you absolutely do that. I can vouch for that, guys. If you guys are listening, I mean, I can vouch for if you're going to be in El Paso Film Festival and as a filmmaker, or you're going to get introduced to a lot of people, and Carlos will be the one introducing you.
Yeah, and if you guys want more advice on like film festivals, we did an entire panel called Film Festival Strategy. You can also meet our other program. I had other programmers this year, Jimena Alvarez and Isaac Marquez. Two people I know really well. Cool. And and that's the thing too, is that don't think that I'm the only gatekeeper for your movies. I have two other people who, like, we're a whole team. Sure. There were times where Isaac loved a movie and me and Jimena didn't like it at all, but he really fought for it and was like, no, this has to get in. It's very good. And the same thing would shift. I thought something was great. They thought it sucked. And I'm like, nope, it gets, like I gave everybody like one or two shots. I'm like, okay, you could veto both of us and pull your movie. And so that's the thing too, is that with festivals, it's a team of programmers that look at your films. And again, I always say, look back at some of the films that we program. So it gives you an idea of the kind of personalities that we have, because every film festival has a personality, just like every filmmaker has a style. And that's where you try to find your home to festivals. And again, we try to do our best to play as many El Paso filmmakers as we can. But again, we also want to, we can't just play everybody. We have to make sure that, hey, that's a really good movie. That should be an El Paso filmmaker, and we want them to represent El Paso. So that's the other thing too. I want you guys to know that it's all out of love. It's all just to make sure that you've grown and you're making great films. Because if you are, then I'm just going to be like, hey, have you met this guy? Have you met this guy? It's like, I'm going to push you to people.
Not only that, but Carlos, I can vouch for the fact that Carlos will reach out to you. If you haven't submitted to the festival and he knows your film is great, he's going to reach out to you and say, hey, why haven't you submitted to the festival? We want to show this thing. So it's true. But it does almost have a checks and balances too, Carlos. I think it's good for there to be we can't just show everybody that submits, even if it's in our hometown, even if they're our friends. No, we want to showcase the film work that has merit that we could potentially introduce to different people that are attending. So I think that's ultimately very professional and what needs to be done. If El Paso wants to become an industry standard city, then we have to be doing industry standard stuff, and Sundance isn't letting everybody in,
Yeah. But again, I'm still trying to be inclusive with El Paso filmmakers. Like, I'll give you an example. I worked on I See a Darkness for a couple of days, and then Rael and Braulio took over. But there were plenty other short films that I also did. There's a couple of features that are part of the festival that I also did. Woke the Monster. That's a feature documentary I did sound on. The short film Cruces, which is about a stand-up comic. My friend Nico Ajimian's in it, but that was shot here in El Paso as well. That was a crew that came from LA, shot it all in El Paso and Las Cruces. And I got to be the sound guy for it. So again, I get to see all these people and I remember these filmmakers. Yeah. So I see them and I'm like, okay, I need to bring you so that I can give you a connection here in El Paso so that when you come back again, it's like, there's a whole party here for you to to put to work if you want to do that. So yeah, and that's the other thing too. And even to you guys, I extend the invitation if you need a sound guy. All you got to do is call or email, man. At most, I'm going to tell you, I can't do it that weekend, or I can't do this, but let's try to hook up here. So that's the other thing too, because I don't I don't try to hide what I do. If you guys look on my website, I wrote a whole blog article a couple of years ago called Sound 101, How to Build Your Own Sound Kit. And it's like one of the most popular things when you Google how to make a sound kit on Google. So I really try to put the knowledge out there. Have you guys worked also with like Rael Abad?
Yeah, well, we've met him at a few festivals, but he's been on our list as well for sound people.
Rael was a former UTEP intern of mine, and he was the only one that I try to take UTEP interns when I can, but Rael was the only one who said, I want to learn sound like you. And I went, okay, are you sure? This is a big thing, okay? So, of course, the first thing I do is give him my 16-foot boom pole and tell him, okay, hold it for 5 minutes. Let's see how you do. And he's like,
sweating.
He's sweating, and he's like, oh, he couldn't do it. And I said, that's okay. Are you sure you still want to do this? And he didn't back down. And so
I was a little smaller than you, man.
But he's gotten really good at.
He's a pro. He's a pro.
He's one who, like, if I'm producing something, if I need him for sound, because I trained him and he knows everything I know. And we've even worked, on set together where they hired two mixers. It's like, oh, great. The student has become the sensei. I'm like, that's awesome, dude. But just to kind of give you that idea that.
No, we're appreciative of that, Carlos, because we know that there's very few. Look, when we started in the film industry, I say this all the time. We encountered some not so kind people here in El Paso that were really just looked down on us. Maybe other people too, but in Tower we had that experience, Austin and I, and we vouched from that day on. We're not going to be those people. We're going to be inclusive. We want people to learn, and if this is something you love and are passionate about, we want you on our crew. But I think it's important for people like you, the Rauls of El Paso, these established filmmakers, the Arturos, who want to teach people and aren't people who look down on other people just because they're new to the block. So we're appreciative of that. We know we have your information to be able to bring you on set, and trust me when I say we have a lot of really great sets that we want to bring in more El Paso filmmakers into. So and that's the other thing too, is that I hope to one day work with the Tower. So and that's the other thing too, because I also can meet other filmmakers, because there's so many of you out there, and I look at what you do. Unfortunately, sometimes when and this is not a knock on what you guys do, but when everyone's shooting music videos, there's no work for a sound guy. So I'm like, I can't work with you, and that's the beautiful thing. I think we've done a great job of having in-house people that unfortunately that limits our ability to, like, hey, we need a sound guy. Whoa, we have a sound guy. Oh, we need a DP. Well, our DP, we have 4 DPs in Tower. So, it's a matter of having that shorthand. However, we're very, very, very open to be working with other people and collaborate with other filmmakers, including your name. Trust me when I say, Carlos, has been thrown around, and we really want to work with you. Trust me.
Why haven't we worked with him, Carlos?
We just haven't had the opportunity.
Something about a film festival, right?
Yeah, something about a film festival.
Running
No, look, here's the thing. When we're out making a set or we're doing something to submit it to a festival, they're already working on the festival, and the timing is just always off with production. Like, we're always working on something. Carlos is always working on something, and then it's really rare when you can find the time, right? I think you can vouch for that, Carlos, to really match level with that.
Yeah, it's I'm working, I'm not working, I'm working, I'm not working. Yeah. And then this year I just had to really pivot because I had to figure out what we're going to do for the film festival. So like all summer I was learning, how to program the channels and stuff like that. So, but it doesn't, I think you guys said that you have like 3 or 4 projects in development. I know I can hit one of those. Yeah.
Oh, definitely. I mean, we have 4 features in development, and then we have like 6 or 7 short film narratives in development. I mean, we have a lot of stuff that's coming up that, quite truthfully, we're just waiting for COVID to pass, man. We're that crew. We're the crew that wants to.
Yeah, I'm ready to take on COVID, man.
No. No, I was gonna say, actually, if you want to try to ease into it, the best advice I can give to filmmakers now is, start with something sincere. Work with a short that's got just 1 or 2 actors in it.
That's great. I know Robert Holguin. He just did something similar, and that film was in the festival as well.
Yeah, Neighbor of the Year. He did that with just Jessica Mraz and Manny, and then I forget the other gentleman's name. I apologize. Sorry, dude, if you're watching. But baby steps.
So
use the first production to kind of see, okay, can we maintain a clean protocol? Can we maintain a clean bubble? Is everybody healthy? Does everyone feel comfortable?
Yeah.
And that's when you learn very quickly. It's like, okay, maybe we shouldn't be doing this. Let's back away. Or you realize, okay, I think everyone felt safe. Everyone was cool. I think we can start to take something else. So I would say work your way up. I mean, I started to do that too. When in April through May, I was scared shitless of this thing, man. I was like, I will not go on a set. And then of course you realize, okay, I got to get back to work. I could not be in a single income household. Even my wife was like, hey, so like, you can be careful, right? So So then little by little, June, July started to pick up, then August, September, October has been slammed for me for productions, even though I'm doing the festival. But it's the same thing. You're scared shitless the first time you go on set, and you're like, I really hope everyone's okay. But then you start to like, okay, I know I feel safe because I'm being safe. I'm putting this on.
That's sometimes all you can do is the more you pay attention to what other people are doing, the more anxiety that's going to creep up on you. But you got to pay attention to what you're doing and protect yourself. That's the only thing you can do ultimately. At the end of the day.
And I'm hoping to do, I have to be careful, again, I have to assess if it's safe. I want to try to do now that the festival, when the festival, by the way, if you guys haven't, this is the last weekend of the festival, please tune in all the way till October 25th. Keep watching those movies. But yeah, after the festival's over, I'm going to have November, December to kind of go back and be like, okay, I'm going to try to shoot a short film with just one person or two. And I'm going to see if I can be very careful about it. Even if I have to okay, I'll DP outside and I'll just shoot inside through the windows or so. I don't know. Like I have to figure out something artistic, but as you
escalate on that dynamic, Carlos, know that Tower Productions is here for any of your needs as well.
Yep.
I'm glad we did this, and I'm glad that we established a connection through El Paso Film Festival. And even before that, we might kind of heard each other's names. So I'm glad that we're finally able to do this, and rest assured, we're here for you, man. If you ever need crew, if you ever need just to bounce ideas off, we're your guys. Trust me.
Yeah. And actually, if you guys do a production soon and you just want someone who's been on the COVID, who's been on set.
Yeah.
I don't mind just saying, okay, guys, try to do this, try to do that. Okay, let's try to work
That'd
this
be
out.
awesome.
Fantastic.
Because like I said, art unfortunately cannot stop, but we all have to be safe about it. But I think if you guys are, you're treating yourselves well, because again, I'm sure you guys all have loved ones, Sandra's a new wife. You do not want to bring COVID to the house. She will kill you.
She definitely will.
But
she works at I might add, Carlos, I don't know if I mentioned this earlier or not. She also works at UTEP. But
what? Oh my God, dude, we need to compare notes.
Seriously, that whole part up. And even her, she's working, obviously mostly working from home, but it's scary for not just for filmmakers, man, and not just for art, but even UTEP and schools and everybody. I work with Region 19, so I'm in the forefront of learning what all the schools and districts are doing all the time. So it's a scary thing, but there's a way to go about it. There's a safe way to stay about it.
Exactly.
So thank you for that, Carlos. That's a big deal for us. So thank you.
All right. Well, thank you guys for having me on the TowerCast.
Sorry to cut you guys off, but it's coming to the end of the podcast, and we like to put the guest in the hot seat with Tower's.
You've seen the show, Carlos. I know you know it's
yes.
coming. I know you know it's coming.
Okay, let's see.
Awesome.
Right.
Word of the day. So we have a word of the day segment just to improve everybody's vocabulary, make us better communicators, collaborators. So Carlos, your word is voluble.
Ooh, voluble. Can you use it in a sentence, please?
You come across as a very voluble person, and that's why I want to work with you.
Wow. Okay. Voluble. Are you sure you're not saying valuable, but in a weird way?
No, it's voluble. Like
Voluble. I would say voluble is. Oh man.
How do you spell it out then?
Voluble. Voluble. Okay. Voluble is
VOLUBLE.
Voluble.
Oh wow.
I would say it's someone who
you're onto someone.
Connection.
Well, I was going to say someone in a place of not authority. What's the word? Someone in a place that can be looked to for answers.
Yeah, kind of. Okay, so voluble is
a guide
who has who has a readiness flow of speech. So somebody who basically just kind of has the answers, or somebody who's like ready when you ask them something. I kind of chose this word because, man, we've been throwing questions at you. And I mean, I felt like I learned a lot like today, just kind of hearing what you had to say. And I mean, all those years of experience from film school to now have just kind of built you up to somebody that, I mean, it seems like everybody wants to collaborate with, because you seem to just be voluble and ready to talk and ready to kind of like shed light onto what's going on. So thank you for being that for us. Thank you for being that for me.
Wow. I did not do well on my verbal SATs, if you did not already pick that up.
Well, one more time, guys, we want to encourage everybody to tune into PasoFilmFestival.org. Make sure on your Roku TVs, on your Apple TVs, and on Amazon Fire, make sure to 25th. Download. Yes, through the 25th. There's a few more days. Make sure to check out all the films. You have the weekend to do it, really. Up to the weekend anyways. And do it now. A lot of great filmmakers. I can't stress this enough. A lot of great filmmakers, a lot of great content. The El Paso Film Festival is doing something really special for El Paso that hasn't been done before. So I encourage everybody, ElPasoFilmFestival.org, Roku TV, Apple TV, download the El Paso Film Festival app on those, and you can watch them.
Extra note, you can go there and watch previous years, previous interviews,
yes, you can.
That's going on there. Yeah, very so true. If you watch what's currently going on, but then also go back and appreciate everything you might have missed throughout the years. I know I didn't get to watch all those films, so that's awesome. Thank you for putting that out there.
Oh, and of course, after the 25th, don't worry. Some content will disappear, but not all of it. So stay tuned. So again, if you miss it, you'll miss a few things, but not a lot. But like 2018, 2019, all those films are going to stick around. So not to worry. And eventually, as 2021 comes around, a lot of that programming, as they start to unveil it on YouTube or Vimeo, I'll start putting it on the channel as well. Awesome. I just have to get the okay pretty much.
Yeah, of course.
But,
awesome.
But yeah, thank you guys. And again, stay home, stay safe, stay healthy. Watch some El Paso Film Festival movies. Only go outside if you're going to vote. That's the only thing.
Yes. That about does it for these towering filmmakers. We want to thank Carlos Corral for being on the podcast today, and the El Paso Film Festival is terrific venture, and we thank him for bringing that to us. Want to thank everybody who's listening in on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you receive your podcasts. If you're watching us, I hope you're enjoying the view here on YouTube and on Facebook and in the Tower Productions pages. Make sure to follow us. Make sure to share this podcast. Help us get the word out. And thank you for being a filmmaker. Thank you for listening in. And if you have any questions, anything we can relay over to Carlos Corral, be sure to let us know. He's very, very attainable, and his email and messages and stuff. So make sure to reach out to him, and we can help you reach out to him as well. So send us any questions or anything we can send to him. Thank you all for being awesome filmmakers here in town. We love you all. Thanks for listening in. We'll see you next time.
Love you guys.